You should study for this test in the pool so that nobody can see your tears. All right, so we're going to review for the Unit 1 exam. And this exam is broken up into 3 parts. So the first part we'll take on Monday. And so it is multiple choice, 40 questions. They're worth 1 point each. And then there'll be, and 10 of those 40 questions are from the slide ID. All right, so let me introduce you to the slide ID. Okay, so there are 20 works of art that I want you to memorize for the slide ID portion of the test, which I'll talk about in a second. For this first part of the test, for part 1, I only want you to memorize the style of it. So know the picture and the style. All right. Then when we actually do the slide ID portion of the test, I want you to memorize all of it. All right. So, and it's rote memorization. You can make flashcards. In fact, I highly, highly recommend you making flashcards, and you will get 5 points extra credit towards your exam grade if you turn in flashcards on the day of the test, on the day of the slide ID. So in this first section, 10 questions, I'm going to show you a picture and you just tell me what the style is. Right? So if it's the Apollo 11 stones, you tell me, you find that it's, there'll be options and you pick out Paleolithic. Then part 2 we'll take on Tuesday. So I'm going to show you pictures from that list that I just showed you of the 20 works of art. This is the part of the test that hurts my students the most. All right, you're not used to rote memorization, but just memorize, memorize, memorize. When I was in grad school taking my classes, they did not give me a list of 20 works of art to memorize. I had to know them all. And in some tests, it was over 100 that I had to memorize all of it. The third part is called an unknown. I'm going to show you 2 works of art that we did not discuss in class. And I want you to tell me what style they are based on what you have learned from the class. All right, so right now we're going to get ready for part 1 of the test. And so we're going to go through all of this alphabetically. All right, so it's going to start with the A's and finish with the Z's. It's going to start with Akkadian and finish with the ziggurat. And so I'll be discussing everything that I'm going to go over is on the test. Some of the things are answers and some of the things are non-answers. I had a student last year that was very confused about what a non-answer is. So here's an example of how non-answers can help you. All right, which president served from 1845 to 1849? Do you know the answer? No, I didn't expect you to. All right. So, but then if we look at this question, it's the same question. Which president served from 1845 to 1849? Who was it? James Polk. How do you know?
Because the rest were too recent.
Yeah, you know who the other people are. All right. You know what they're and when they were. All right. So the non-answers helped you to get the right answer. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to make sure that we know everything that's on the test so that it helps you on the test. Okay. Akkadian style. We did talk about Akkadian art. We did not linger on it much. All right. And so I don't think there's much of it on the test, but Apkallu is on the test. And that's the man with the bird head, and he's got wings, and he's picking a pine cone, and he has a bucket. Do you guys remember that guy? If not, you can look him up. The Amarna style is on the test. During the New Kingdom, Akhenaten comes into power. He changes it from polytheism to monotheism. He changes the capital from Thebes to Amarna, and we have a slightly different style of art during this period. The people looked a little bit more curvaceous or curvy. The bull leaping fresco is on the test. Know the style, right? I'm going to show you a picture of it. Tell me the style. Buon fresco is on the test. Go back into your notes, find the definition for that. The term canon is on the test. That's where all the figures of Egyptian art look the same. They all have the same instructions for the proportions. It's the top of a column. Charcoal is what the Paleolithic artists used to draw black up on the wall. A citadel is a fortress. We looked at the citadel of Agamemnon. The citadel of Tiryns, that's the one that they thought was the citadel of Agamemnon. You had better know what a clear story is. We did a field trip on it. I went through the whole trouble of scheduling a field trip for you guys. Used up half our budget. All right, I want you to know what a corbelled vault is. A vault is like a hallway. The corbelled vault is when the stones come in just a little bit each time it's repeated. Gravity holds it all in together. Crete shows up on the test. That's the big island where they thought that the labyrinth of the Minotaur was. The crook and flail shows up on the test. I think on that question, I show you a picture of it. You need to be able to identify it. Cuneiform is on the test. Know the difference between cuneiform and hieroglyphics. The dancers and musicians is on the test. Know the style. It's in your slide ID. Basically, on this one, I just want you to know where Egypt is. It's a very simple question. There's a geography question, and then Egypt is one of the answers or non-answers. I want you to know what an engaged column is. We saw those with Egyptian art. So there's a question about where Mesopotamia is, and it's between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. So just make sure that you understand where Mesopotamia is. There's a question about a fertility goddess. How would you know a fertility goddess if you saw it? Something of that nature. This one, I think you need to know the style. And go back to Abkulu. Know the style on that one. That's what I want you to know from that. Fresco is on the test. And fresco is just it's the overarching term for fresco secco and buon fresco. And fresco secco is also on the test. Know the difference between fresco secco and buon fresco. There's a question about gold leaf on the test. Very thin sheets of gold that are used to cover objects. I showed you a video of them making gold leaf. Yeah. All right. So if you're talking about the that mask of Agamemnon or that death mask, yeah, that's not gold leaf because it's a thicker plate of gold. Gold leaf is like thinner than a sheet of paper. The Hall of the Bulls will be on the test. Know the style. Hatshepsut is on the test. All right, know who she is. Hierarchic proportion and hierarchy of scale are both on the test. Both of those terms, they both mean the same thing. Hieroglyphics, I never defined hieroglyphics in class, but we should all know what they are. They're the language of the Egyptian. It's in all the artworks. I want you to know what the deal is with Horus. Why is he important? The name Imhotep pops up on the test. Know who he is. All right, and then the Ishtar Gate, I want you to know the style. The goddess Isis pops up on the test. I know that I have a picture of the Lamassu on the test. So either, I can't remember exactly what the question is, but either what are they or what are they used for? Right, what's the purpose of them or what are they? Will you be able to identify them if you see them? One of the last things that we looked at was the Lion Gate, the Aegean Lion Gate. That was that triangular one that was above the post and lintel, all right, with the two lions facing each other. Do you remember that one? And then also the Lion Gate from Mesopotamia. They're also on the test. I want you to know what purpose they serve. I spent some time talking about the difference between Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. Know the hats. Mastaba is on the test. Mesopotamia is on the test. And basically, I want you to know where it is. It's like one of the first things I talked about. And the Mesopotamian art, it might be something like, what's the difference between Mesopotamian art and Egyptian art? Something of that nature. A more general, just have a general knowledge of Mesopotamian art. The term Middle Kingdom pops up on the test. There was hardly anything we looked at with the Middle Kingdom. All right. It was a blip in our studies. I want you to know the Minoan columns. I pointed out how different the Minoan columns are than everybody else's columns. The mortuary temple of Hatshepsut is on the test. All right, before we get to necropolis, Narmer is on the test. Narmer. Narmer. Remember the Palette of Narmer? So the name Narmer pops up on the test. And he was the king that's on the Palette of Narmer. And then necropolis. Nefertiti was the queen to Akhenaten. Her name pops up on the test. And also, I'm going to show you a picture of the Nefertiti statue. And I want you to know the style of that. Nemes is on the test. That's that cobra-like hat that they wore. Know the difference between Neolithic and Paleolithic? All right, I don't know why it's listed twice. It's a typo. I'll just give it away. Like the New Kingdom is a non-answer on the test. All right, you should know what ochre is. That's how the Paleolithic artists made paint. They crushed up colored rock, colored dirt, mixed it, and then painted with it. All right, Old Kingdom. What kind of art or architecture did we look at that was strictly from the Old Kingdom? All right, Osiris shows up on the test. The Palace of Knossos is on the test. That's where they thought that the labyrinth was. Know the difference between Paleolithic and Neolithic? The Palette of Narmer is on the test. Know the style. You should know what polytheism means. You should already know it. That shouldn't be a new term to you. I think on this one, I'm going to show you a picture of post and lintel. You need to be able to identify it. Before we get to the pyramids, pre-dynastic shows up on the test. The term pre-dynastic. And that's where the king, the Narmer palette was from, was pre-dynastic. There's a question about the pyramids on the test. What time period were they from, or what era were they from? More specific than that. Were they old or middle or new? Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, or New Kingdom? Ramses II pops up on the test. You should know what a register is. RoboCop is going to show up on the test. The rod and ring will show up on the test. And I barely mentioned Shamash. All right. He's a god. That's all you need to know. I talked a lot about space in Egyptian art. The statuettes of perpetual worshipers. Know the style. I'm going to show you a picture of that. They're the people with the big giant eyes. Remember that? The term stele shows up on the test. And the stele of Hammurabi. And that one, I want you to know the style. Stonehenge shows up on the test. On that one, I want you to know the style. The name Thoth shows up. It was a minor character in one of the stories that I told. I didn't talk much about him at all. Remember that Mesopotamia is the area between the Tigris River and the Euphrates River. The Tower of Jericho pops up on the test. All right, so the Tower of Jericho, that was the first tower, that first tall building that was buried. And then the Treasury of Atreus was the last building that we looked at. That's the one that had the corbelled dome. And I think with that one, the Tutankhamun, I think I want you to know the death mask of Tutankhamun. Let me see. Either just know that he was a pharaoh, or know that the death mask of Tutankhamun was, or what style it was. There is a question about twisted perspective. Right. Know what unified Egypt is, or that's like when you see the vulture and the snake together, or you see the two hats combined into one hat. Upper Egypt, know the hat. I barely mentioned the Valley of the Kings. I mean, that's basically where Hatshepsut's mortuary temple was, and King Tut's tomb was. Other than that, I didn't really mention those or talk about those at all. I mentioned Zeus in a couple of stories, but we didn't look at any artwork that was based on Zeus, at least not yet. All right, that'll come second semester. So, and then finally, Ziggurat. Now, I absolutely raced through this to get through it all by the end of the period. I went really fast. Does anybody want me to go back? And we have a few minutes now. Does anybody want me to go back? Is there anything, any of those terms that you want me to go back over or talk about? Shamash, I barely spoke about Shamash. On the stele of Hammurabi, it has a king giving Shamash a rod and ring, right? So he's a god. He's a Mesopotamian god. All right. This first test is usually the one where students have the hardest time with. So I have made it 10% of your exams, but do not blow it off because it's worth 10%. All right. So study for this exam and get to know how I do my exams. And what else? Your exams all together are worth 40% of your whole grade for Lone Star. So it's important that you try hard on all of your exams. Yes, sir.
Will there be a review on Smooth Year?
Yes, I have. I have this thing that I just showed you is in D2L. The slide IDs are in D2L. I'm recording right now. I'm going to edit it and put it in D2L this weekend, hopefully tomorrow. So you guys have time to, if you want to go back and listen to this. And what else? So yes, it's all, and I also have all the pictures in D2L. If I don't have them in there now, I will be putting them in this weekend. Yes. Besides flashcards, what? All right. So flashcards will help you with the slide ID portion. I noticed you were typing. Did you type all this into your computer? All right. So when it comes time to allowing you to look at your notes for 2 minutes on the exam, I'll only let you look at your sketchbook. So I would recommend that you print out everything that you typed and glue it into your sketchbook, or put it into the pocket in the back of your sketchbook. All right. 2 minutes. That's why I gave this to you in alphabetical order, so it would help you find stuff. All right. Anything else?